So thank you for, again, being with us. We have another fantastic panel before our luncheon discussions. This one is going to be focused on empowering diverse leadership, and it's going to be moderated by our own Susan Segal. We also have Paula Bellizia, Vice President, Sales, Marketing, and Operations for Microsoft Latin America. She flew in from Brazil this morning and is flying to Mexico this afternoon. We have Gustavo Sorgente, Managing Director, Latin America for Cisco Systems, and Tish Mendoza, Senior Vice President, Human Resources and Business Services, and Chief Human Resources Officer for the AES Corporation. Susan, over to you.
Well, first of all, thank you, Nancy. This is a great honor. This is a fabulous panel. And let me tell you why. Number one, obviously Cisco and Gustavo, great friends, technology. But we have two women in industries that aren't really typical. You don't think about women in technology, Microsoft, and in energy. And so Tish. And so this is a great opportunity to have a really powerful discussion about diversity in the workplace. And I'm going to ask each one of the panelists in 1 minute or so to just give us the highlights of your career, and then I'm going to dig deeply into questions. Tish, why don't we start with you? We'll start at the end.
Thank you. So it's so great to be here with all of you. Thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to not only talk about a topic that is critically important, I think, across all sectors, but is really top of mind at AES. So I was thinking about how I would tell my story, and I think that you could all relate if I say that Andreas became CEO of AES in September 2011, which also happens to be the month that I re-entered back into AES after having twins. And about 3 months later or so, he promoted me into the CHRO role. And so having to balance newborns with a huge role with the strategy and the transformation that Andres was trying to make at that time for AES was a bit of a whirlwind. So I don't really remember the first 2 years of my children's lives, but it's been fantastic. And to have a leader really believe in my personal and my capability and my ability to contribute to AES's transformation, to understand the needs and the importance of family and balance that you need to be able to be successful. And the support that he gave me is just tremendous. So I think that, tone starts at the top, and he definitely sort of, walks the talk in terms of diversity and opportunity for everyone. But I've been with AES for almost 14 years. I should read my bio. And started in compensation and benefits at AES, including executive compensation. And so, but before that, had been with JP Morgan Chase and a technology company that was a startup. So I've kind of been all over the place. AES is very much like a very large startup company. So, we're expected to be very agile, to sort of shift, to fail fast, and we're relatively flat for such a big company. So I was able to fit in quite well when I came to AES. The other thing that was very interesting about AES, which I appreciated, is that the energy sector is very male dominated, and you need to be able to talk in numbers. So coming from HR, with my background in compensation and benefits, I was able to have the financial discussion that did help me, sort of win a seat at the table. And so, just sort of progressed my career through AES, was head of HR for our line of business, our utilities line of business, which is global line of business, for a little while, and then, as I said, became CHRO. And then over the years have been expanding my portfolio, which now includes communications, which we're evolving, and my communications leader also happens to be an engineer and is here with me today, as well as global business services, which is shared services. So it's just been fantastic, and every day I learn something new, and I'm just grateful for the opportunity that AES has given me to expand my personal development as well as my professional development.
Thank you, and we'll come back to that. Gustavo.
I was born in Argentina as a first generation of an Italian family escaping the World War II. I grew up in a country under a military government, so my first 20 years in my life were all about not making myself visible. Don't talk, don't challenge, don't fight, don't say much. So I went through the engineering school. I got myself into the technology business from very early in my career. And I went through the different stages in the different roles in the technology company as I was able to dream myself differently, you know? Because in my times, many years ago, I mean, you were trained as an engineer and you are gonna die as an engineer. So I went through the step of my career, and many of the things that we were discussing here today, I think that are beyond gender, you know, are happening to males too. So I went through different stages in different companies, worked for IBM, for Sun Microsystems, for Cisco now, and I always had this dream of being multicultural, see what happened outside, and when I dare myself to do it, I started to face this Latin American business in different flavors, and I got to understand the culture and the difference of our people in Latin America a lot better. You know, we frame people somehow when you don't know them. As I got myself into that journey, I think that changed myself a lot, and I think in a way I became a promoter of diversity, because I understand in my own job the relevance of diversity, despite the benefits, the economical benefits of the appearance of having a balanced team. I think that in real life, if you want to survive a business that I used to manage in a multi-country region like this one, diversity is extremely important, and it's not granted. It's not something that happens because it happens or because it's common sense. It's something you have to fight for. Fortunately, Cisco is a company that is very open in that sense, promoting diversity, not just gender, but background diversity, cultural diversity. And I became a big promoter of that chapter, and that's what probably going to contribute today in the discussion.
Thank you. And Paula, I've known you for a really long time, and you have a line position, so talk about that.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Susan, and all the team to have me here. It's the first time that I participated in an event out of my previous capacity. I used to be the general manager, the president of Microsoft in Brazil. I got just promoted, so that's a sign that Microsoft is a company that, you know, values the diversity growth. So I think my personal story talks a lot about that. I came back to Microsoft to take the leadership of Brazil. It's my second season at Microsoft. I left the company before. I went to Facebook to learn. I had the courage to leave the company that I loved so much, but because I understood that I had to learn more. And after Facebook, I went to Apple to be the general manager of Apple in Brazil as well, and then I came back home. I'm super thankful for being back at Microsoft. I have a technical background. I'm a programmer myself, so I came from the technology background, and I was one of the, maybe 2 people in my classroom at university, already developing and coding. I used to code something that doesn't exist anymore. I'm not going to tell you what it is, because you are good in math. You are going to be coming to my age. I don't talk numbers in this sense, but I came from this technology world, which is very male, and there is a bias there that says that women cannot be successful in technology. That's wrong. That's completely wrong, and we do a lot in terms of bringing benefit to that world, because technology is innovation. Innovation doesn't exist without diversity, right? The different brings the innovation. So I think there is extreme value there. And today we have a CEO that is so clear about that diversity and inclusion is in our values. It's is one of our core pillars of our culture, Susan. It's diverse and inclusion. And we've been debating how can we even get better. And Microsoft used to have and still has very good talent, female talent in the region. So I'm right now one of the sponsors at the regional level to become, even stronger at that and take that to the next level. So in a nutshell, that's it. I'm a mom. I have a boy and a girl. They teach me every day about diversity. I have a few stories, so thank you.
Thank you. So Gustavo, let's start the next question with you. So from your perspective, you're working in the tech world, and Paula's just said what it's like to be at Microsoft. So what's it like as you look across the region for Cisco with diversity?
Well, Cisco, as I said, is a company that is very sensitive with diversity, and I think that is due a couple of reasons. One is we are always want to be in touch with the field. I mean, the corporations, when they grow up and they grow big, lose the sensibility with the markets. And we have seen a lot of volatility in the last 10 years. In the market, is not a solution that is going to fix or fit everybody. So it's important to have that voice from the field in our operations, and that it comes with cultural diversity and gender diversity. Extremely important for us to keep that balance, and we monitor that a lot. In the other hand, we see a gap in our field where it's more technical, is a lot in the, not just in the software, but in the electronic side of the business, a big gap in engineering among the communities. There are not many Western kids studying engineering. Second, there are very few women studying technology. So there are a lot of Asians. My kid is an engineer himself. All his friends are Asians. He moved to Japan, just to be more clear. So they couldn't bring him here.
Can't bring him here, you go there, right?
I think that the problem that we are having today, more from a technical side, in having the pipeline of women we want to hire for a given job, is starting earlier in life. They don't study engineering. So we have an organization that is called Networking Academy, and in there we put an extreme focus on gender diversity, little women studying engineer, to have a real pipeline in 10 years or less.
So Tish, you have the same problem, I guess, at AES. So could you talk about how you find your diverse workforce and promote them?
We have exactly the same problem. So I spend a lot of time thinking about it and reading about it. So let me give you a statistic. I think it's 1 in 20 women graduate with engineering degrees, and 1 in 5 men graduate with engineering degrees. And so that's a real challenge for us in our sector. So I can't imagine you don't know this, but the energy sector is undergoing major disruption and transformation, which is really sort of changing how we do business. It's changing our customers, it's changing our business models. And there's a mandate to go green, to be more renewables focused, and to decarbonize. And so you add on top of that technology or digitalization, and it really creates an opportunity for disruption. And so that's sort of what we're facing now. And when we look at the workforce that we have today, it has 2 characteristics that create challenges. One is that it's predominantly male, and I think the last time I looked, the statistic is in the high teens in terms of women representing the workforce in the energy sector, and it's significantly aging. And so, how do you take that combined with the disruption that we're facing and ensure that you're developing and creating a workforce of the future? So that's some of the challenges we have just in general at a macro level. When we look at then what are the skills that we need for the future, engineering is really critical and core to that skill set. And so we find that we have to get quite creative in terms of how we support the development of the engineering skill set, because I'd like to sort of break the mold in the future, the energy company of the future, and not. I'd like to have greater gender balance. I'd like to see 50-50. I think there's no reason why we can't strive for that. So we've had, we partner with universities and that sort of thing, but we do see that STEM starts early, and it doesn't just start at the at the college level. It starts in elementary education, quite frankly. And in some of the countries in which we operate, it's even more critical because it does contribute to the country's economic development. And so there's a lot of things that we do, both internally as well as externally, with corporate social responsibility. I've talked in another talk about how we do help our communities. So we do have a program in El Salvador where we bring women through electrical training and certification. So they're certified to be electricians, which is amazing. Yeah, it's really cool. And so we bring a class through the training every year. And so it's one to say, look, we support gender diversity even in emerging markets. We support gender diversity as a company because our mission is to improve lives. And I think our people feel that at their core. And we support diversity and development and improvement across all levels in the organization.
So Paula, one of the things I've always been impressed by with Microsoft, I used to go to your leadership forum, is the number of women throughout Latin America and throughout the company that Microsoft has hired, engaged, and been able to promote. Talk about how that happens and how you keep the women and promote them, how you find them, keep them, and promote them.
Yeah, I love to tell stories, and it's very common to what you have described. But for example, our CFO, the global CFO, is a very strong, very competent woman that, in partnering with the CEO, is really helping to transform Microsoft. So I think we have those stories, Susan, happen in the company. I can tell you what I've been learning personally on that journey to attract, develop, retain more women. So for example, I think there is a lot of bias when we go to the technical teams and you want to hire women. Yes, there are fewer women than men, but there are. Those women, those 20% are out there. So one of the things that I work with my team to try to shift the mindset, right, this growth mindset attitude, was that instead of coming to me saying, there are no women, I want you to go and find those women. And for me to approve the final candidate, I want to be sure, myself as a leader, that the pipeline was diverse. The candidate to be hired needs to be the better candidate, but we need to force the mental model to be different and to look for the diverse pipeline. So that alone was helping, the teams to start to think differently. So this is one thing that we learned in Brazil and is actually doing well. The succession plans needs to be thought with a diverse perspective as well. So I was just succeeded by another very, strong leader in Brazil. Tânia Consentino is the new GM, the new president of Microsoft Brazil. So we look for that, and this person has been in our succession plan for more than a year. So we do not look for those people, for the diverse talent when time comes, but we nurture the relationships before. So we do that at a very tactical, very intentional way. At the same time, we do things, as you described, to inspire women for the technical careers. For example, Susan, there is a video that we launched called What's Next for Girls. So the Gigi Girls kind of campaigns, etc. But this video strikes me because we made a research, a questioning, right, a survey with young girls about who are the inventors that they would be reminding, right? And they all talked about Einstein, Thomas, all the names that history have told us, all male. And none of the girls thought about a female inventor or scientist, when actually the person that was the first programmer, all right, it was Ada Lovelace, which is a lady. So we need to shift a little bit the mindsets to say that yes, it's possible, yes, it's out there, yes, it's difficult, right? But if we are able to work on those two fronts, the very short-term, tactical, intentional actions, and to have a stake on the ground for where you want to go, and at the same time work on the inspirational part to have more women interested in those careers, maybe it's paying off as well.
So I'm going to drill down on that and ask all three of you, because we've now established that very few women graduate from engineering. We've got to change that, but we've got to change that in elementary school, and I would argue we've got to change that even when kids are 3 and 4 at home, and the way parents interact with their male and female children. But now you have a group of young women in your company. What do you specifically do to keep them? Because Microsoft's going to lose them to Facebook, who's going to lose them to AES, who's going to lose them to someone else, who's going to lose them to Cisco, because there's a limited group and everybody needs diversity. So what do you do without favoring women too much to train them, mentor them, maintain them, keep them, show them a path? And maybe we'll start with you, and then we'll come this way.
Okay. So first, I think it's important to talk about our talent management and our performance management programming, our strategy, is really foundational and fundamental to our company strategy. So we do measure succession, we measure all those things, but we also look at diversity and inclusion relative to all the different areas in talent and performance management. So it's foundational to our strategy. We're very clear about that. And then, we integrate diversity and inclusion as well as retention, attraction, all those things into our systems, top down, bottoms up. And so, and we have an approach where we develop people, and we call it the 70-20-10. You may have heard of it. So 70% of an individual's development will come from experience and exposure, 20% from assessments, opportunities to do these sort of things, and then 10% will come from formal learning. And so we segment our population, and I should have mentioned we have about 10,000 people in the company, and we apply that same approach. So if you're an entry-level trainee, the approach to develop you is 70-20-10, all the way up to the executive level. Now, what we focus on is different because the capability needs change. But we apply the same approach. So I'll give you both ends of the spectrum. So if you're a trainee, we very specifically go to schools and target certain schools to bring in young, new talent. And we go for a 50-50 candidate pool, and we haven't had an issue so far in meeting that goal. What we are finding is that when we look for those really needed skills at that level, a lot of the boys are on the engineering and they graduate with degrees in economics, and the women are sort of on the other side. But that's okay, because what we've done is developed a rotational program for the trainees. So for 2 years, every 6 months, they rotate into new roles. And so we're able, very, very young, entry level in their career, to give people, women, the engineering experiences they need, or the experience they need in finance, or whatever the case may be. We do that very early. And so we do that across the world, and so that's sort of our training. That starts our pipeline, actually. And so we watch our pipeline kind of grow throughout the organization. 6 years ago, when we really took a different approach to implementing the 70-20-10, and really thought about how we develop people, when we looked at it, Andres and I realized, well, actually, we have a lot of really great women in the organization, but they're all in finance, they're all in other areas. And so what we did is we decided, in order to develop the 70, why don't we use our very unique portfolio, because no two markets are the same, and very deliberately rotate our candidates, both men and women, but very deliberately taking the women out of finance and putting them in a market role. And so we rotate our high potentials and folks that have potential to become senior leaders about every 2 to 3 years, which means that they need to move. They're moving internationally every 3-ish years. And they're often sort of at that mid-level with lots of potential, having kids. So, we have to put a lot of structure and support around them. But what we have found is that has created not only a very good leader, both in women and men, but it has improved and increased our balance in terms of gender at the most senior levels. So 6 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to say this. I can say this today. Our regional CFOs, 50% are men, 50% are women. When we look at our market leaders, I think that we're about 25% women. When we look at commercial and there's another, our presidents, the direct reports to our executive team, we're about 40% women, which is tremendous for this industry. And so I think what we've had to do is ensure that our program, our strategy is implemented into all of our programming, and that it is a priority for the leadership team, that you manage what you measure, you're showing the data that, and your results, and it also needs to be a priority for your board. And so the expectation is set from our board that we show how many women have been promoted in the last year, how many have moved, where are we moving them, we have this high potential candidate, when are we moving him to this other market to develop those skills. So it has to be, I think, really top down from your board all the way through your trainees.
Congratulations, that's quite a story. Gustavo?
I can say that we have a nearly early in career program, so we pretty focusing get the right gender and cultural mix in those groups, and they come in with I can say in my own experience, the same ambitious. I don't see a difference between a woman and or a man at that age getting into a company. The problem is they are coming with with a speed expectation that we don't have anymore. Okay, so they can wait 10 or 15 years to get it to the top. So what we found is there is a way to lead wherever you do in the company. You don't have to get to the top position or top leadership role to lead. So we are trying as much as we can as a structured big company to open up spaces for these kids to do their own way. Okay, so I challenge them with programs. For example, 2 years ago I had a group studying the market generation program. They came to me as the president of the region to tell me that our market demand generation program was a disaster, and they dropped it to me. I said, okay, go fix it. Okay, and they got that empowerment to go fix it and did it themselves. So the sense of purpose, the sense of making things that really matters to the company, to the structure, keep them on board. So I think that is an important way of really retain the talent for the future. And the other is helping them to really see what they are looking for and try to guide them somehow. The other factor, and now is strictly or more, if you want, relevant when it comes to women's, is virtual work. Okay, the structure of giving the flexibility to work from wherever they want, their house, their other country, wherever they are, and be still having that sense of belonging to their organization, their group, the team, is extremely important. And we do promote that agenda heavily, and in some cases even includes changing regulation. For example, in Peru, 2 years ago, we were, I think Microsoft was part of that journey too. We were dealing with the government to have a teleworking regulation, because it wasn't allowed in Peru for anybody to work from a house. So more advanced in their careers, we found that for women it's extremely important to have the possibility of balance their life in a way that they can share their house with the work. I'm not saying that it's not important for men. I think it's extremely more important for women, and that increases our retention rate big.
Paula, same question to you.
Yeah. No, in addition, because I agree with your points, and the pillars are very important, I think I would add two things. So first, on the retention, people actually sometimes, or most of the times, they don't leave the companies, right? They leave the managers and the leaders. So one of the things that we are trying to work more is on this development of this layer of the organization, the people managers, for them to absorb the concept of why this is important, why not only diversity but also inclusion, how to treat those different people. It can be the gender, but it's not only gender, right? We're talking about all kinds of diversity that needs to be accepted in the workplace in a very, inclusive way. So I think that's what I would add here. And I think it's important that we tell the stories. I think women are inspired, everybody, human beings are inspired by successful stories. And what we try to do also, Susan, as you well pointed out, is that we try to tell those stories. It is possible to be a successful mother. It's a lot of work. To your question, it's a lot of work. But it's possible to be a successful mother, a successful, have a happy family, and be having a career. I don't think the pioneers, the women that were pioneers, they were able to get there. I think earlier in this journey, women would have to choose between having a family and having careers and having, challenges. Hopefully and fortunately, today we are entering this moment of history that we can have both. And I think technology supports that a lot, right? Technology allows you to, we're not going to fight here, but because we compete, but technology allows, right, you to work remotely and to have remote meetings and remote management. So this is super important as well. And another thing that we are experiencing is on this people manager thing is the Allies program. It's interesting because I still see, we are like maybe 97, 98% women in this room. We need more men, right, as well, to be part of this so that we can really amplify the impact and have more diversity into the discussions as well. So that will be my addition, Susan.
I totally agree we need more men in this discussion.
So thanks, Dan is here. It's my colleague from Microsoft as well. He's accompanying me, so yeah.
That's great. So let me open it up for a few questions. Yes, please, over here.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kelsey Flitter, and I'm from Burson Conan Wolf here in Miami. And so I really enjoyed the different panels and conversations that we've had all today. And so I think in earlier conversations, some different points that were brought up were the need for sort of women to play this company game and negotiate like men, think about their next career move the way men do, and things like that. And because the system that is the workplace is set up to kind of have those standards, it's important to think that way. However, I think that perpetually sort of keeps us as women at a disadvantage because we're not being placed in a role that is suitable for us, or we're expected to act differently than how we may naturally act. And so I'm curious to know from your perspective, what kind of cultural shift can we make in the workplace and in organizations so that women are started, or so that leadership starts to value women for the differences in their perspectives and presence that they bring, as opposed to just, trying to compete like the boys, because facing it, we'll never compete like the boys because we're not boys. So thank you.
So who would like to start with that question? Okay.
So I don't think that, I would hope at this point we don't have to talk about sort of the value that diversity brings to an organization. Companies are in business to make money, right? So the diversity inclusion needs to make sense, and so it needs to deliver value to an organization. There have been many studies that show that diverse teams make better decisions, that profitability improves, that the company is more innovative, which is critically important when you're in a competitive environment. So I would hope at this point we don't have to continue to try and prove that business case for change. I feel like we do. However, we didn't in AES. And so what I can tell you is that we started, it takes a long time to change culture. So we started trying to make a cultural change about 6 years ago. And one of the things that was critically important to us was collaboration. And collaboration meaning not just talk to your neighbor, it's really, we need to put disciplinary teams together. When we make decisions, it needs to be decisions that really gather everyone's input. And what we see, so the business case is, we have a region where we've rotated more leaders that have a variety of backgrounds that is generally, it's typically 50-50 in terms of gender balance. And they have both functional and business experience. We see performance in that region just excel other regions or other markets where we know they're a little more insular. And so even internally, we've been able to prove that business case for change. And so it really does start to become part of your culture and how you work. And my team here today can tell you that whenever we make a decision or whenever we work together, it's always a multidisciplinary team that comes together to make those decisions. So it needs to be part of your culture.
Gustavo?
I can tell you guys that I think you are mystifying how easy it is for a man work in the corporate world. It's exactly the same issue that you are facing. I tell you because, I think that I'm being discriminated, I'm being left behind, I was not promoted when someone less qualified did. So I think there are a couple of mistakes that we all do, male and female. One is the belief that we are so worthy of others giving us what we deserve. In business, nobody deserves anything. You get what you fight for. You don't fight, you don't get anything. Okay, it's the one screaming louder, fighting more, doing. So I think that you have to make sure that you put yourself in the job at full. It's the maximum you can do, the best of you. Okay, to be shining over others and make it invisible in an honorable way. But nobody's gonna knock your door for anything, wherever you are, female, male, or whatever. The second is your career, your problem. Okay, so it's up to you. It's that easy. No, but it's practical advice. If my company doesn't value me, it's time to walk away. It doesn't mean that the human race doesn't like me. Okay, maybe this company, maybe it's this guy that is my boss. Okay, and I don't like him, whatever it is. So I think that is a problem that is more common that it seems, and I think that. It's something that we all need to think through and try to manage in a better way.
I loved your perspective. I really do, because I think it's the corporate world is tough, right? It's tough. It's about you position yourself. You cannot say I'm not going to position myself because I'm a woman. You need to go as well for the parity game. So that's one thing. So I love your advice. I feel the same. But I would add that there is always the other side, which is we do have biases. We do have, for example, a woman that is in maternity leave. Is she being considered to a promotion when she's back or not? So there are biases, and the way that we've been thinking about working on those biases is to train that as a capacity, right? So we need to detrain our old biases and retrain our minds to the new behaviors we want to have, which is collaboration, which is growth mindset, which is the ability to have curiosity, genuinely be interested in the other, empathy, all those values that we want to see in the workplace, right? We were talking about, I think somebody said that we need to get the workplace better as well, right? As part of the society. So I would add that we need to retrain our mindset. The companies that have, healthy cultures will pay attention to that, but you have to put yourself in the game. Sorry, there is no excuses. If you want a career, you have to fight for that.
So I'm going to take 2 questions at a time. I'm going to take one here, and then we'll move to this side, and I'll take your question.
Well, thank you very much for sharing your experience. My name is Angelica Valencia. I work for JP Morgan, covering Latin America for Treasury Services and Innovation. My question is, can you share your experience how you continue, being very successful at your careers, being having a full-time job, and at the same time being a full-time mom and full-time wife, some of your experience.
Full-time wife, maybe.
Yes.
Can I pass the question?
Yeah. And also tips, because as you continue succeeding in your careers, it becomes very challenging. And how do you manage your emotions if you have to travel, leaving your kids, finding it's sometimes very complex.
Maybe I can.
We're going to take 2 at a time so that we can try to get more in. So, yeah.
Hi, my name is Kristen Dacey. I'm with an impact investing fund, Imprenta, that has a gender focus. And one of the projects that we're working on is with women in STEM, specifically software engineers in Mexico and Colombia. Previously, I was at the Inter-American Development Bank for about 8 years, and we did a lot of studies where quotas weren't necessarily the most effective way to get women into the workforce, that one of the better ways is to make sure that the recruiting is attracting women, that you know, depending on the country, wouldn't necessarily want to advertise in Financial Times or whatever that may be. And I was wondering if you had any practical recommendations from your experience on what you do to attract women into the jobs when you're posting the jobs or doing some of those things.
Paula, let's start with you this time.
Me. Oh, so starting with your question about how to be successful, listen, forget about being perfect. That's as well the first advice to your point. We're never going to get there, right? So we will not be perfect executives, perfect mothers, and perfect whatever. So once you deal with that, I think you have better chances of succeed. You fail and all of them, you can't fail all of them together. That's going to be super challenging. But you will fail, and that's fine. That's number one. I think in my career, I had a boss that promoted when I was pregnant. I was pregnant for my second child, and I was promoted to be the head of operations in Brazil. For me, that was stunning, and the love that I created for Microsoft when I had that experience was amazing. But then I also put my entire self in that job, even being pregnant, right? So I worked to the last day. I was super happy, full of energy, and then the next day I was giving birth. That's it, etc. But sometimes when my son was 9 years old, I love this story because I remember entering very late in my apartment in São Paulo, and he was there staring at me saying, hey, you always arrive home at this time. And I said, you know what? That's the mom you have. I love what I do. This week is going to be hard. Next week is not going to be so hard. So I was trying to show him that I was balancing in a month. I'm going to be with you this week. Next week, maybe not. The other week, I'm going to travel. And then today, he's 17. He reminds that conversation with me when he was 9. And he's so proud of my profession. And he is actually telling me to give advice to his girlfriends. I hate that piece. I really hate that piece. So I think that you have to put that in perspective. And if you want a career because that makes you happy, go after that. And your kids will recognize sometime, down the road, maybe. And then to your point on, STEAM and how to recruit versus quotas, I'm not a fan of quotas. I think that creates the negative effect into the other communities. But sometimes having a very intentional objective, call it whatever you want. I hate the word quotas, but you have to do something that is affirmative, that is intentional to change. Otherwise, it's going to take, I think there is a research, right, from United Nations that says that for us to have gender parity is going to be 80 years. We cannot wait for 80 years. So, yeah.
Yeah, I could say that I'm also not very fan of quotas. I was having that conversation with Giselle the other day, but I think when you want to change the status quo, you push pressure, a lot of pressure, and the system changes, but doesn't last. As soon as you stop putting pressure, the things go back to normal. If you want to get a long-standing, sticky change, that is going to take time. So the idea of quota probably is good. She told me in that conversation, if you want to create a change and a mindset that immediately have an impact, but in the long run, it's not gonna make any difference. I think that the unconscious bias, that is what we have to work on, because people have a bias about everything, not just about women, but it's something that we have to evolve and work on. And I'm gonna take in your question too, because men also have to find balance. I was traveling everywhere at the time that my kids were growing up, and I missed most of their teenage times, which is extremely awful. Looking at from where I'm at today. So I think that the career is not a linear thing. And it was a boss that I had, a Canadian guy, that told me that we Latin Americans I'm talking about myself because this is a mixed group, but we think in progress, constant progress, okay? And the progress is always been higher. And when you think in your career and you have the chance to develop your career, it can be a linear thing. You can go back and forth, and you can have times where you need to dedicate your time to something else, your family, your personal wellness, whatever it is. And you can come back. It's not that you don't get that promotion tomorrow, you will never gonna do it, or you're never gonna make it. I think that is the right thing for any of us at the right moment. And when the right moment comes, you are gonna be full energized to go fight for it, and that's when we are gonna make the difference. So we are gonna have the more chances to win.
Tish.
So my team's heard me say this. There will be days where I'm like, I'm the bad mom today, or I'm just going to be the bad, AES employee today, because it really does. You can't be all things at one time, and so I think, we need to have both professional experiences that allow you to be able to make that shift and to be the bad mom one day and the bad employee the other day. And I think that we just need to probably take the pressure off of ourselves that we're not going to ruin our kids if we travel for a week. And in fact, I think we give our kids a lot of perspective and opportunity that maybe other children don't get. I can tell you that some of the women that we move around, and I have a case in my mind in particular. She has 2 children about the same age as mine, and she moved from the U.S. to Europe and Europe to Central America within the space of 2 years. And what she said is, I was really concerned that this was going to be difficult for my kids and for my family, but this happens to be the best thing that ever happened to us because they speak Spanish now, and they're in the international school, and they just have this experience, this multicultural experience. So I think. We need to take the pressure off of ourselves and just just admit that there are days where it's not going to be our best selves in one of the areas. And in terms of the local, we talk a lot about our employer brand and our company brand and how we want to relate to certain audiences. And I think you need to understand your markets and the target that you're trying to relate to, and ensure that you're refining your messaging to work for them. So, what we do in El Salvador is, we have utilities in El Salvador, and we need to very much be part of the community. And we have a workforce that is just really super engaged and very dedicated, but it's predominantly male. They're utilities. But they recognize that we can offer support to their spouses. And so a lot of the women that have gone through the electricians program are spouses of our employees. And so we were able to tailor the branding and the message. We understand our community, we understand the need, and so that's how we're able to reach out. But it's not a one-size-fits-all, as you can imagine.
So I want to answer your question a little bit personally as well, and some of my team have heard me say this. I, like you, Paula, I went from my office to the hospital. And the doctor told my secretary that she was to put me in the car and tell the car to take me to the hospital, not to take me home. So I have just always found that you have to balance. But my kids are now 29 and 31, and I've realized that it's not about balance as much as it's personality. My kids are grown up. I still feel guilty, only now I feel guilty about leaving my dog. And so it will never change. If you have a type A personality, you will find something to feel guilty about and to decide that you have to balance. And I think that's just kind of the way it is. And I will add one other note, that both of my kids are just so proud. They want to be with me. I'm the first person they call for advice. I'm the first person that their friends call for advice. So I could spend my whole life mentoring their friends. And so I think, in a sense, it's created a bond because, there are a lot of moms that don't work or fathers that don't work. But it doesn't mean that they spend less time with their children. It just means that they do something different. And kids very quickly realize that if you're working, you're doing something productive, and you're trying to bring quality home, and you're helping support the family and the things that they want. And so they get that. And they, even at an early age where they can't totally digest it, they get it. And so I think that is really important as well when you think about work-life balance. And so with that, I want to thank my panelists. Nancy is telling me we're out of time. You're just amazing. And thank you for being with us, and thank you for sharing your stories and your insights.
Thank you. Thank you.